Welcome back to the Honest Art Podcast. I'm your host, Jody King, and I'm excited to talk to you today about this topic. So, if you are an artist, this may or may not have happened to you yet, but I guarantee you it is going to happen. And that is, you will get a request for a donation to a cause. So, you'll get a request for your art to be auctioned off, or something like that, for a fundraiser. And I remember the first time that somebody called, and it was a friend of mine, and she was on the committee for an organization, and she asked if I would consider donating a piece of my art to the fundraiser. And I have to tell you, my art was not good. I was really a brand new artist here. And I was just completely flattered. I couldn't believe anybody would think that somebody would pay enough money to make a difference in an auction, for my art. So I was absolutely flattered, and I was more than happy to do it. And and it went well. Actually, a friend of mine ended up bidding, becoming the highest bidder and getting the painting. So that was fun as well. But I will say what happened was, once the word got out that I would donate my art for fundraisers or to different organizations for things like that, once that word got out, I started getting a lot of requests for me to donate my art. And this might be you as well. And then that brings up a bit of a dilemma, what to do about that, how to handle that. There's only so much art that we have. So that's what we're going to talk about in this week's podcast. We're going to talk about best ways to handle this whole donation thing, and to do it in a way that works for you as an artist and for the organization. So are you ready? Let's get messy. Okay, so here you are. You get the call that somebody, or you get the email. That's usually how it happens for me, is I get an email. But sometimes you get a call, and somebody asks if you would mind or be interested in donating a piece of art for their fundraiser. And first of all, I will tell you, I've never been asked to donate a piece of art for a fundraiser that wasn't like absolutely deserving. People don't just have fundraisers for organizations that are, crap, right? Everybody believes in it, and there's so much need in the world. So I've never been asked to do something that the organization wasn't amazing, right? But that's the dilemma. It's like, oh my gosh, it is such a good cause. And, that school does do so many good things, or that, whatever organization, it's always for a good cause, for sure. And that's where the rub comes in, especially if you're somebody like me who just really does, want to help out in the world. So that's the thing. But here's what the two things they always say. Number one, if you start to give any sort of pushback at all, they'll always say, one, it'll be great exposure. It's always going to be great exposure for your art. And the other thing that they usually say is there's going to be a lot of people with money in the room, right? So that really tugs at not only our heartstrings for the organization, but it has this emotional pull, because for us as artists, what do we need? Well, we need more eyeballs on our art. So when somebody says that's going to be great exposure, it's incredibly tempting. And it's not that it's not true. There will be, a lot of eyeballs on the art. So that feels very like a big motivation to do it. And the other thing they say, about there'll be a lot of people with money in the room. Well, that's the other thing that we want as artists, is we want people to buy our art. And even if that money is not going, to us directly, it does feel really good when somebody says, oh, this is Jody King, this is her art, and, let me spend some money, and it may not go to her, but it's going to go to a good organization. It does feel really, really good to do that. But again, the issue for us as artists is that it's not that all of those things aren't true. It's just that we have a limited capacity for the amount of art usually that we are creating. So we can't give to every single thing. So the one thing I will say is that if we donate from a place of like a fear of like, oh my God, I need people to see me, or oh my gosh, I want people with money to see my art. That's, to me, that is a lower level reason to donate the art. Like energetically, that really feels a bit of scarcity. It feels like a little more constricted. And so what I always like to do is I like to think, am I all in? Is my full heart into this donation? Because if I'm excited to put my art out there, if I'm excited to help these people raise money, like if my heart is really in it, that creates this energetic flow that just feels so much better than like from a place of constriction, or even from a place of, well, I know this person and I don't want to upset her and all of that. That's never a good place to come from. So how do we do it? What is a good way to do it? So what I did is I eventually had to get to the point. I remember one month I had 3 requests for donations in 1 month. So that's when I was like, I gotta figure out a system here for myself. So what I did is I wrote down 4 organizations that I felt really, really passionate about. Now, for me, I had to write them down because I needed to remind myself, Jody, just because everybody wants, and everything is a good cause, remember these. So I donated to epidermolysis bullosus, which is EB, the butterfly children. That's something I'm very passionate about. I have a friend whose son has EB. So that was important to me. Breast cancer was important to me because that has directly affected my family. Environmental concerns, there's a lot of environmental things. So it would have to be something that I felt passionate about for myself. And then at the time that I was doing this, I was really involved in this great school in Houston called Yellowstone Academy, which is a school that serves the poorest of the poor in the community. I was really passionate about that. So I wrote those down, and I realized that if I was going to donate, to participate, that those were the organizations that I felt most passionately about. Now, the reason that was helpful to me is that helped me stand firmly in myself, so that when I did get a request, I knew exactly what my response was going to be. It was always going to be a response with love, but it was that, thank you so much for your request. I'm flattered. But I've had to choose just a small number of organizations that really speak to me and that I'm passionate about. And those are the organizations that I donate to. But I wish you the very best. I hope your fundraiser or your event is a wild success, and what you're doing is just a beautiful job. So I always do that. Now, are there times when I get a request and it's not from one of those 4 that I was passionate about? For sure. And I can do whatever I want, right? And you can do whatever you want. And in those times, I'll absolutely donate if I feel like something that's, really, really speaks to me. So you do whatever you want. But I found that just having that stance and having that kind of structure for myself was really, really helpful. The Honest Art Podcast is now on Patreon. And if you're like me, I didn't know what that was, but this is the good news. It's a private community platform, so you can get even more from the Honest Art Podcast. So exciting. So as little as $1 a month, you can get early access to episodes, and for a little bit more, just a few more bucks, you get things like behind the scenes shenanigans that I'm up to. You get connection within the community of Patreon. We get to do Q&As. It's just a little bit more intimate, and you get discounts. You get early access to workshops, all kind of things. So consider joining my Patreon community, and you can do that at the link in the show notes. Then it becomes, okay, what paintings do we choose for those events. And there's a couple of things that come into play. The first thing is it's like, do I choose a painting that has been sitting around and it's been around for years and, it's not one of my favorites and nobody has bought it? Do I choose that painting to donate because I'm not going to be making any money off of it, right? There's that option. Or do I choose a painting that I'm really proud of that I know could bring good money if I sold it? Do I choose that one? There's another dilemma, right? So I have found that when I have donated, I'm not proud of this, by the way, when I've donated the painting that I thought, well, nobody wants that one anyway, I'll just donate it. That feels really yucky. That feels really yucky for me to do it that way, because then, if it didn't get a good price or anything like that, then I'm like, oh, was it because of the painting? But from the other perspective of when people are saying, well, it's going to be great exposure and there's going to be people with money there, is that really what we want to put out? Is like not our worst work, but the work that nobody else wanted either? Is that really what we want to do? So again, I'm not the boss of you, but my suggestion, what I started doing is I started donating work that I was really, really proud of. And you can imagine when you combine an organization that you're passionate about with the gift that you have been given and then donating something you're proud of to that organization, it just amplifies the experience for everyone. And I feel like, that's the energy that I want to put out into the world with my art, because that's the energy that I'm also going to get back. So that's always my suggestion is do what makes you proud and what's going to feel really, really good for you. Now, the other thing in terms of, what painting should you donate, what I will often do is I will choose a painting whose title reflects something about the organization that I'm donating it to. So if it's if it's an organization and it's about empowerment, that would be a painting like that. If on the other hand, if the organization was more of like an environmental sort of thing, I might donate a piece that leaned towards an abstract landscape or landscape something, or floral, something like that. So choosing the piece and like knowing your audience is also important to be able to get the best results for that organization. So, just something to keep in mind for that. So those are some of the things that I like to consider when it comes to donating. Now, there's always the thing that may or could happen. And that is that, what if nobody bids on that? Well, I'm going to tackle that. If you're a part of my Patreon community, we'll be talking about that. I'll create a separate video, if that happens. If you're not part of Patreon, please join me at Patreon and we'll put the link in the show notes. Okay. But one other thing that I just want to say that has helped me, and that is when somebody requests a painting, I always like to ask them if they are going to have any sort of form or any sort of sheet that has a minimum bid requirement. Because, if we're donating a painting, like for me, if I donate a $5,000 painting and during the auction or the fundraiser, there's no minimum bid, then it's like you can't expect a collector or somebody who may have never heard of us or have never seen our art before, you really can't expect them to know the value of it. So having a minimum bid or even putting the value of the painting on the form can be really, really helpful. It not only serves us as the artists, but it really helps the organization as well, so that people are like, oh, I think like this is actually a cool piece of art, even if they don't know art, right? So the other thing it does, so it helps the artist, it helps the organization, and it helps the possible new collector to want to make a bid and to understand the value of the painting. That's always a really good idea. And then one other thing that I like to suggest is if there's any way that you can have your artist statement or a photo or something like that that really talks about how people can contact you. If you can have that associated with the painting somehow, that's always a bonus. Obviously, we are not donating from the place of, this is going to establish me and establish my business. We're not doing that, but it is nice. Like, some people do want to know a little bit more about the artist, and sometimes that can help them make a decision whether they're going to bid or not. So that's something I always like to request and see if that's possible. Again, sometimes it's not, but I always say, this is going to benefit the organization as well as the collector. So that's just something to think about. Regardless, I will tell you that donating a piece of art for organizations that I'm really passionate about is it's a joy, and it's a pleasure to do, because as artists, we have been given this gift, and I like to say I've been given this gift by spirit. You can call it universe, you can call it God, you can call it however you want to say it, but I know that what I create, I step back all the time. I'm like, holy shit, how did that happen? I know it wasn't all me, right? I know that I partnered with something greater than myself to create this. So when it comes through the creator, it comes through me. We're able to create this piece of art. Then we're able to put that art out into the world to serve people that, wouldn't otherwise have the funds, or whatever the fundraiser is for. It creates this beautiful, almost like not to be cheesy, but it's like a loop of love, right? It's just like this loop of goodness. It comes through us out into the world, and it always comes back to us. It's just, it's such an honor. It's a real honor to be able to donate. So, consider it that if you do get a request, but also we also have to have our own boundaries, because our art is not limitless, right? Okay. Thanks so much for listening and for joining me today. If you're joining me on YouTube, can I just ask, can you please like and subscribe to the channel? That really helps us out. And if you're listening on your favorite platform, I would love it if you could give me a 5-star rating and a review. That's helpful because it helps other people find the podcast as well. All right. Until next week, take good care of yourselves and each other. Peace out. If you are ready for a profound change in your art business, like for real, you're ready to soar, I highly suggest you get a mentor or find yourself a community. So that's what I did with Studio Elite. I love mentoring artists in my Studio Elite program. It's my highest touch program that I have. And we are accepting applications now for the 2025 program. We start in January. So if you feel like 2025 is your year, that it's time to put your stake in the ground and you're ready to go hard and to do this, I would be honored to work with you. Just look for the link in the show notes for the applications, and I would be honored, like I said, to work with you soon.